the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have the roll call?
Councilmember Boff?
Here.
Councilmember Stimmel?
Here.
Councilmember Williams?
Present.
Councilmember Strobehn?
Here.
Councilmember Cerveny?
Present.
Mayor Thornton?
Here. Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. If there's no requests for any items to be removed from the consent agenda, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next to the mayor's report, I do have a few things that I want to share this evening with the council. First of all, just for scheduling purposes, last week I sent out an invite to have a city council work session on Saturday, May 18th. Everyone has responded. I don't think it's going to work for Councilmember Williams, but Councilmember Stimmel, he has another obligation that day as well, so I was going to suggest maybe we could meet at 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, May 18th, and have about a 3-hour work session. Jeff Swanson will be facilitating it again. So if that works for the council.
If the coffee's strong?
That's the same conflict I have. We start at 8.
You start at 8?
So either I'll come to this or
Yeah.
don't.
No, I understand.
7 or 8 doesn't make any difference.
I know the weeks keep going by, and it's just hard to get something scheduled, and I don't like to have them for less than 3 hours, so.
Yeah, as long as you accept me in my pajamas, I'm good.
And that's fine, whatever works. Sadie and Josie's opens at 6, so we're good.
I can do that.
Is that gonna work?
7
Okay.
o'clock?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, we'll get that scheduled, and I'll send out the invite tomorrow. One thing I want to bring to the council's attention, to the community's attention, that, and this is something I just received here a few minutes ago, but May 15th is Peace Officers Memorial Day. And every May 15th, by proclamation of the President is Peace Officers Memorial Day. Peace Officers Memorial Day is part of a police week paying tribute to local, state, federal law enforcement officers. Flags are flown at half-staff in memory of those officers who have made the ultimate sacrifice. Services honoring the fallen will be conducted across the country, including Washington, D.C. The National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. features the names of more than 19,000 law enforcement officers who have been killed in the line of duty. So that is the week of May 15th. And just recently, we had a loss of an officer in Colletts County, so I think that's brings some special significance to this particular Memorial Day. So with that, I would like to talk about some accomplishments that we're enjoying here in the city. Paperwork in front of me now. I lost my page, but here we go.
Big pile.
Yeah. So the City Center, we just recently received a $1.5 million appropriation during the recently concluded session for the Washington State Legislature. And the funding comes through the Washington State Department of Commerce Local and Community Projects Fund, and it'll be in the 2019-21 biennium budget. And that $1.5 million is for a project. It's going to be to widen 4th Street and to replace the Breezy Creek culvert under 4th Street. So that's a project that was identified on our 6-year CIP, so it's something that was a high priority for the City of the Center. And it's something that when Jeff Swanson started working with the city this past December, it was one of his initial tasks was to try to get put together a legislative agenda and make that a priority for the city to get that accomplished, and I'm really happy to say that's been done. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this. The funds will be used to conduct engineering, design, permitting, and other pre-construction work to replace a fish blocking culvert under 4th Street and widen East 4th Street to urban complete street standards from East Cedar Avenue to Northeast Highland Avenue. Replacement of the culvert will aid in salmon recovery in Breezy Creek, the East Fork Lewis River tributary. Roadway widening will improve safety and mobility for motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians in the vicinity of several school facilities. East 4th Street also serves as a regional connector between the Interstate 5 La Center Junction and areas of northeast Clark County outside of the city of La Center, carrying a substantial number of regional trips each day. So I just really want to, thank our legislators in the 18th District, Brandon Vick, Larry Hoff, the two representatives for the 18th District, and of course Senator Rivers. She was really a champion on getting this accomplished for the city of La Center. So, but it was Jeff Swanson and Lloyd Halverson who really carried the ball in Olympia for us, and it was just great to go up there with Jeff and be able to knock on the doors of our legislators. And it was kind of funny, we were up there one time and knocking on doors, and people kept saying, well, Lloyd Halverson was just here talking to us about that. So we did put on the full court press, and we actually got some rewards here. And I want to thank the council for their support in getting this accomplished. You may recall that during our retreat this last year, we invited the legislators to join us for lunch, and we had a great visit, and I think all that is cumulative, and it's just great that we're making some headway. So, and the city staff, Tony Cooper and Naomi Hansen, they also worked on it as well, and they did a great job. So it's going to be a big project for our community. The $1.5 million will be followed hopefully by another grant in 2020 to do the construction, and that's going to be approximately a $5 million ask. That's what we're thinking about right now anyway. So, and then in addition to that, we also got a grant it's an RCO grant, and it will be to improve the Holly Park ball fields for drainage and for irrigation. So we got a $75,000 grant for that. It's going to be a $75,000 match by the city, but that money will be used to improve the ball fields at Holly Park. So that's another big, create some better ball fields for our Little League and soccer players and everything. So I think it's going to be a big improvement for our community. So again, I want to thank everybody for their hard work and dedication for that. And I just also want to say this evening that, right now, La Center, we have a great many projects going on, a lot of development. I mean, it's just incredible the volume of work that the city is having to deal with right now. And I just really want to thank the city employees for stepping up and getting it done. Tony Cooper, Matt Jenkins, I mean, they're doing just phenomenal. Our new finance manager, Dustin Bailey, the chief, they're just all stepping up, and it just keeps coming at us, and they just keep, they just keep working their hearts out. We got Laura Martin here now. She's our new accountant and assistant city clerk, and she's doing great. And it's just a real pleasure to be working with these folks. And so I want to thank them as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the council members for their comments. And I'll start with Councilmember Boff.
Is your turn?
Pardon? Well, I'm sorry, I forgot about Dan. And thank you, Dan, for all your hard work and efforts. Every once in a while, on these email chains, Dan will throw in a hand grenade and say, well, did you think about this? So I appreciate it.
I don't have anything new or unusual to report tonight. Not much has changed since last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the city attorney? Okay, Councilmember Boff.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Yesterday, I attended the Clark County Community Action Advisory Board's meeting. The advisory board has been normally meets every other month, but this year they have met every month, working on grant applications from nonprofits and various projects and programs. The final scoring for the funding evaluations has been completed. The CAB, as we call the group, has submitted recommendations to the county council, and the county council is expected to take up that issue very, very soon. When the council approves it, and by the way, the recommendations are subject to revision by the council, so when the council takes up the CAB recommendations for it's a 3-year funding program, when we get the response back from them, then I'll come back with more details for you at that time. Next meeting, since we're going back to the regular schedule, won't be until July, but I hope to have an update prior to July, and I'll keep you informed on what develops on the CAB. And that's all I've got tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Stimmel.
Well, I'm pretty excited. Those were the two things I was looking at. As a parent with little kids, not having crosswalks on both sides of that street is a big deal, and widening it should give us options for turn lanes that will maybe help some of that traffic move along. Salmon are important too, but having those streets walkable in between the only store and the only school, very important. And I know we argued a little bit about that complete street compliant, but it appeared to work. We got funding, so that's great news. Just want to say thank you for that. I'm very excited to share with the Little League Board that the drainage project is going to move forward. Maybe we'll be able to get AYSO or some other soccer league to come back. It was pretty bad during soccer season. I'm not sure why it is they're not playing on those fields now, but still very exciting to share that with the Little League Board. Should be this week. That's it for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams.
Thanks, Mayor. I've been out of town doing some vacationing, so to speak. One thing that I saw yesterday, I was up in Shelton, Washington, and we were on a little rail adventure, and there's a body of water, a river that we crossed, had a completely new fish crossing put in, and I asked our host where the funds came from for this, and Department of Ecology had done that work. So I know we're looking for funds for this crossing up here. That might be another source for us, because it was really nice what they did there. And I mean, the county, I think, had to kick in some money for the completion of it, but Department of Ecology really stepped up and threw a lot in there, according to my host. Other than that, that's all I have.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Strobehn.
I have nothing tonight. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay. And Councilmember Cerveny.
I have nothing to report this evening either. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, this evening we have 2 staff reports. First one will be from Chief Denny.
Mayor, Council, citizens of La Center, Chief Denny, La Center Police Department. Mayor, first off, I want to thank you for announcing the Law Enforcement Memorial Week. And just for everyone's information, every year Clark County puts on a memorial service down on Franklin Street at the Public Safety Building down there in the courtyard. They do a really good job announcing all the names of the officers and deputies and law enforcement that have died over the years in Clark County. And press is on scene, and they do the salute and all that good stuff with the flag, and it's a very good service to attend. And it's Thursday, the 16th of May at 11 o'clock, I believe, is the time for that. So if anyone's interested in attending, they have chairs and people come from different areas to memorialize the officers that have died. So anyway, monthly update for City of La Center. We've pretty steady for the La Center Police Department this month. They handle a majority of cases that were DUI related and domestic violence arrests that were made. They had a few driving while suspension arrests. Also, they helped Clark County Sheriff's Office and Ridgefield Police Department on backup for some of their cases that they were working on. So they've been pretty busy. They also participated in a distracted driving emphasis program It's a state-funded process through Target Zero, and Officer Save and Sergeant Scott were able to participate in that. And between all the agencies that participated, Battleground, La Center, Ridgefield, Washougal, Vancouver Police Department, and Clark County Sheriff's Office, they were able to, it was a 2-week program starting from April 2nd through April 12th, and it paid for the overtime for the officers to participate. There was 594 drivers that were pulled over. They wrote 276 citations, and of which 142 were related to distracted driving. So pretty substantial numbers for that event for 2 weeks, and they also arrested 36 people during the countywide 2-week emphasis. So, not a good thing, but obviously it's a good thing that we're out there making sure people are abiding by the laws. So, the drug take-back event occurred April the 27th. We didn't have the event held here in the center this time, but they did have it up at Cowlitz Crossing and a few other locations throughout the county. And they were able to take back 4,311 pounds of medical prescription drugs, 1,623 total participants in that as far as people dropping off medications, and 1,307 pounds of sharps and EpiPens were collected during that event. So pretty substantial considering that these are held quarterly, and that's the amount of poundage that is being received on a regular basis. So pretty significant if you think about it, and then the fact that we also collect every day of the year at our police department as well. So, and the next page is basically the stats. I'm not going to go over them in detail. As you can see, there's a lot of traffic going on. Traffic 146 or 148 traffic stops for the center officers in town. So that's quite a bit. So they're out there and they're busy. Did 143 premise checks during the month. So, and the patrol emphasis is basically just that. They sit in certain areas where we're having traffic issues or problems, and they'll sit and they'll do emphasis, and they did 41 different emphasis this last month. So, pretty busy for a small department. So, with that, does anyone have any questions? Yes, sir.
The DUIs you mentioned, were those in town or up by I-5 near the?
Because it was Clark County related.
Oh, it was
There was all
assisting?
over. Yeah, so I don't have the stats just for our area. I can take that back and see how many they show up on our stats.
I just never seen it listed like that. Maybe, I think there was maybe more than usual.
Yeah, no, that was a county-driven
Oh, okay.
emphasis, and it was
Okay.
all the different areas, and those participated, so,
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Very good, thank you, Chief.
You're welcome, thank you.
Yeah, and I also, I did not mention, and I want to mention that May 18th is Armed Forces Day, and it's a day to pay tribute to men and women of the United States Armed Forces. So that's May 18th, when you see someone in uniform, don't forget to thank them for their service, as well as our veterans. So that'll be May 18th. The next report that we have is from Public Works Manager Matt Jenkins.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, citizens. Matt Jenkins, Public Works Manager. This is the works report for May of 2019. Just the high points. Public Works staff's been working on the crosswalk lights on the 18th and Aspen. Those have been an issue for several weeks now. I know the chief has been asked about them several times. The final part we're waiting for is on order. Turned out to be a battery issue. Worked with the manufacturer, so those should be up and running in the next week or two, just depending on when we get the part. Public Works crew continues to go around in the nice weather, look for potholes, carryovers from the bad weather, and areas where we can repair the roads. Street sweeper will be out the next several weeks, completing kind of a spring cleaning, trying to get the loose grit and gravel from the winter off the roads and out of the shoulders. Public Works is done spraying the right-of-ways. If you've noticed, the strips around our our boundaries. They've done a great job and knocked those out of the way. Just the highlights on parks. Due to the warming and seasonal weather changes, staff is on a constant mowing schedule now. The grass is growing quite a bit, so they're constantly out mowing. They've taken care of weed management in most of the parks and cities, and will continue to stay on top of that. They just finished energizing the citywide irrigation system, so I'm replacing nozzles and making sure that's ready for the warm weather to come. They've also completed pruning in most of the parks and trails, and bark replacement at Sternwheeler Park and the Public Works building. They are preparing the splash pad, and they'll be servicing that, checking that, and making sure that that's ready to go for the upcoming season for the children. And on the equipment side,
Do we have a date when that's gonna start?
the target date for that is probably Memorial Weekend.
Memorial Day weekend?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it depends on the temperature, to be honest. In the past, we've waited until school's gotten out, but if it does get too hot, we'll try to open it early for kids. So, the staff completed repair on one of the Kubota right-of-way mowers. We did that in-house. It was a cost savings to the city there. And we also received the John Deere 35G excavator. Staff was using that last week out at the Public Works building. And as far as personnel, we started our summer temporary maintenance worker on May 6th. And on the wastewater operations side, the plant continues to meet its monthly discharge monitoring permit by quite some margin, and treatment continues to, plant continues to operate at removal rates of over 99% and produce an effluent with zero fecal coliform. The operators have been working hard on completing the city's renewal for the annual laboratory accreditation in conjunction with the Department of Ecology to keep our accreditation of the plant laboratory. The system operators recently performed an overhaul of a chemical pump and an actuated valve in solids processing. They did this work in-house as well, and that was cost savings to the city when you looked at the expense of replacement parts on both of those items. Staff is also performing annual services and inspections on all of our submersible mixers and pumps now that the weather is much nicer out. And the programming work that was mentioned in the April staff report that we did on the biosolids dryer has resulted in a reduced natural gas use of 30%. So we had a 24% reduction in April, and that was only a partial month. March, and then April was our first full month with that programming, and it was a 30% reduction. So that'll be a cost savings. On the collection side, staff will continue inspecting manholes throughout the city, and then projects, we continue to ramp up for electronics replacement at lift station 2 and 3. Staff's also working with Tony Cooper on the design comments and specifications for the Riverside Estate pump station and force main. And staff's reviewing the sewer basin analysis and lift station design for the new middle school. And we are going to be working with Kubota Membrane USA in analyzing the lifespan of our current membranes in situ. Are there any questions?
Great job, Matt, you and the team, and Tony are just really keeping the city ahead of the curve and on track with a lot of cost savings, and I know it's a lot of hard work. Thank you.
Pleasure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Good report. So next on the agenda is citizens' public comment. If anyone would like to address the council, please step up to the podium and give us your name and address, and if you could please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Larry Luton, 1109 West C Avenue, Mayor, Council, folks. I'm here tonight, not as a citizen, but I'm actually here for the Homeowners Association, Country Hills Estates. We understand, because of the way the roads are set up, the city's not going to maintain our roads. due to the fact that they weren't put in right or something. So we had a meeting, and they said, hey, Larry, you go down and throw yourself at the mercy of the council. We'd like to know if we can enter into an agreement with you guys whereby the city would help us at least fix it, and we'll pay. We have money in the bank, and we can do it. You guys, if you have the department, we'd rather give the money to the city plus work with you guys than picking up the phone and calling somebody to come take our money and give us a half-assed job, because they have no commitment to the city. So I don't know if that's something we could do. I don't know if you enter into anything like that with other homeowners associations, but we would be willing to do that. We only have one way in and one way out, and if that goes down the toilet, a bunch of people are going to be walking to get home, and that's not going to make people very happy. I mean, we still are living in the city. We're part of the city. So, but if I could get some direction, we'd be love to come in and sit down and talk and see if that's even a feasible thing to do. I don't want to take more than 3 minutes, but I just want to run that up the flagpole and see who salutes it. We've got to do something. And I think that could be a viable option that way if we get a look at that. So thanks much for your time.
Thank you.
Alpha 152 West 15th Street. I really like the city staff is always here. That's great, but there's somebody missing over there that used to come all the time, and that's from the fire department. I haven't seen any representative from the fire department here in, I don't know, 5-6 months. Sure would like to see a representative, especially with summer coming on, and looks like it's going to be a hot one. And also, there's this house that got torched up there right off Aspen, and I'm getting tired of looking at it because it's been a couple months and they haven't done anything to it. Is there any way to expedite that, to get it tore down? Good. Doug's writing it down. Good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, council members, and City of La Center residents. My name is Devin Rostfer, and I'm from the Department of Ecology. And I'm going to keep it short tonight. I just wanted to announce that we're having a public town hall on June 3rd at the La Center Grange from 6 to 8 to talk about the water cleanup planning work that we're doing in the East Fork Lewis River. And it won't just be ecology. Clark County Clean Water will be there, Clark Conservation District, Washington State University Extension, someone from Clark County Public Health, as well as a local group called the Watershed Alliance. And really what our goal is for that meeting is to answer questions, to share information and resources for landowners that are interested in implementing water quality improvement projects on their property. So I brought some flyers. If you're interested, I'm happy to give you one or leave them behind in case anyone comes in asking questions.
What was the date and time again?
June 3rd from 6 to 8 at the La Center Grange here in town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. Okay, with that, I'll close the public comment period, and we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. The first ordinance we have this evening is for the Stormwater Utility, and tonight the Finance Manager, Dustin Bailey, will be presenting along with Matt Jenkins and Tony Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The City of La Center is a non-chartered code city government governed by Title 35A of the Revised Code of Washington. And in that Code of Washington, it states that the City of La Center may make and enforce within its limits all such local police, sanitary, and other regulations as are not in conflict with general laws. So the RCW also authorizes the city to provide stormwater utility service and fix rates and charges for those services. Given these parameters, the City of La Center contracted with FCS Group, a firm with extensive experience with utility rate studies. The scope of services was to assist the city in determining the applicability and the possible rate structure that the City of La Center could use for stormwater utility. Staff worked with FCF Group to determine the following, which were presented in detail at the work session on April 24th. Those were funding options, utility concepts, rate structures, financial policies, and revenue requirements. So during the course of the review, the key components of the stormwater utility were identified, including rate revenues, operating expenses, rate-funded capital, and we did not consider new debt. So in this exercise, we looked at everything that it would take for us to maintain, operate, expand, and all those things necessary to maintain a healthy stormwater system in the city. On the screen there, you can see a chart that details out the annual capital expenditures estimation, just to give you an idea of what this would look like. And based on the needed operating capital, several rate models were developed. The most feasible staff found was the equivalent residential unit, or ERU, based on an average impervious area of 3,000 square feet. And lower in the staff report, you can see the table that breaks down the 2019 rate proposal of $10 per month for single-family residents, and then $10 per ERU for non-residential properties. There's also built into the proposal an annual rate increase of 2% per year to keep in pace with inflation. Moving on to budget impact. The absence of a stormwater utility means that the expenses for planning, design, construction, maintenance, administration, operation, and improvement of the city's stormwater drainage system are pulled from the La Center General Fund. And I think it's important to note that the city of La Center is the only city in Clark County that does not have a stormwater utility fee in place. Creation of a permanent funding mechanism that's equitable for the citizens would relieve the burden of stormwater operations from the general fund. There'd be a dedicated fund from which the stormwater facility-related expenses may be applied, so that means that those revenues for the stormwater utility fee can only be used for stormwater operations. And public health, safety, and welfare may be enhanced due to a focus on stormwater utility operations for the city. So overall, it's a positive budget impact, and staff recommends the City Council approve Ordinance 2019-12 and Resolution 19-445 establishing a stormwater utility fee for the City of La Center. Are there any questions? And by the way, I have Matt and Tony here to answer technical questions because that's not my thing.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Is it true that if we have a stormwater utility that will qualify us for matching funds from the state, should we get into major projects and so forth?
I think I would have to defer to Matt on that because he's been working on that with several departments of the state.
It definitely is going to help. The stormwater utility and then the master plan that would come as part of that would definitely help identify projects, capital improvement projects, and work with, which we've already been doing with Devin and some of her peers on identifying these projects and seeing what qualifies for grant dollars moving forward. The utility reserve, as it grows, will be a great addition to be able to help match those grant dollars.
Thank you.
Was the tax proposed to be collected enough to keep the stormwater drain completely operational, or is there still going to be more money that has to come out of the general fund for that?
That's not a tax, but the utility rate is what we identified was O&M costs along with capital improvement projects over the next several years, I believe 6 years. So the short answer for your question is yes, it is enough.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you very much. This is a public hearing, so before I open up the public hearing, is there any other discussion or questions from council members? Okay.
I always feel weird talking about the historical perspective on things, but the stormwater utility tax, I know we get into talking about the fee itself. What it does for the city and for the citizens is pull those actual funds out of the general fund, as both of you mentioned, and make it more clear to the citizens across the board, existing and new coming citizens, what those particular dollars are used for. And as you said, it also helps us look at those funds, use them for grants, and actually see when we're budgeting what we're actually needing, how we're planning, and in the whole scope of things, clarifies how we go about allocating the funds that we do have, which becomes even more critical going forward with the loss of the card room revenues and such. So I think, looking at it from a big picture, while it's never, something we really want to tackle initially, I think we're at that critical juncture where we really need to as we grow as a community before we find ourselves in a real dire situation where we have major projects that we're facing and we're scrambling for funds to do it. So, thank you both for your work.
Okay, thank you. So with that, at 7:10, I will open up a public hearing. If anyone would like to address the council, please step up to the podium and give us your name and address. And if you limit your comments to 3 minutes. I also just want to mention that we also have here this evening Mr. Tim Schell. He's with Wallace Engineering, and he was very influential and helpful in putting this project together. So thank you for that, Tim, and thanks for being here this evening as well.
Hi, Skip Carlson, 35915 Northwest Jenny Creek Road, La Center. But as a citizen, I have a couple of concerns about what constitutes impermeable surfaces, because I see this, and having talked to some staff, how the ERUs are going to be computed, what constitutes impermeable. Obviously, rooftops and paved surfaces are impermeable. And my concern is strictly as a citizen stakeholder out there on gravel surfaces. I just wanted to be on record with that. All of La Center is impermeable, whether there's asphalt or not. Obviously, the ball fields need drainage because they're impermeable. It's the nature of the soils here that everything is impermeable, and that's the nature of our soils around here. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you for that. Tony, would you mind addressing just the compacted gravel and what your engineering manual says on that?
City Council. Tony Cooper, City of La Center, City Engineer. So in answer to Mr. Carlson's comment, the stormwater manual we go by, which is the Puget Sound manual, has a definition in there of impervious surface. And rather than read the long definition, it basically says that if the surface impedes stormwater, if it doesn't infiltrate, it's considered impervious, and that includes compacted earth surface, gravel surface, pavement, sidewalks, anything that building rooftops, that's considered impervious. Now, it's hard to say one surface, even though it's compacted earth, is impervious. But in La Center, I've looked up the soils manuals and I've dealt with this a lot. Is predominantly the soil in the center is a silt loam clay. It has a very slow infiltration rate. It does not infiltrate at all, about 1 inch per hour at most. So the definition basically says that if it's a compacted surface, and the reason why that is you're trying to prevent stormwater from running off too fast into the storm system and not having enough capacity. So in development projects, developers are required, when they develop a site, they have to look at the pre-existing condition, which by the definition is forested, as opposed to when they develop it. So they have to detain the stormwater to prevent that stormwater from running off and over inundating the storm system and not having that capacity. So that's the definition. that the stormwater management manual, what the stormwater manual has. That's the definition that's in the ordinance. And I've also checked with other jurisdictions, City of Vancouver, City of Washougal, they all use the same definition. So it's hard to say that every site, even though it's compacted, it's earth, gravel, aggregate base, is really going to not infiltrate and run off, because every site is different. There might be some site areas that infiltrate a little better than others, but in general, the soil does not promote infiltration. So that's where the definition came from. So to answer your question, there are a few sites adjacent to Paradise Park Road that have a lot of compacted earth. Mr. Carlson's property is one of those. It has, one of the sites has predominantly compacted earth, and by definition that is impervious. The Van Vessen property, the rock plant, the rock concrete area. Anyway, that's compacted earth. That's considered the same thing. I think the Budge property is another one. It has probably half building rooftops, half compacted aggregate base. There are a few sites that have that characteristic. So by definition, it is impervious.
Okay.
And that's the way the manual looks at it.
Very good. Okay, thank you for that. Any questions for?
If there's a house, let's say it's a 5-acre plot with a house on it, that's one ERU, right?
That's one ERU, yes.
Even if it's entirely gravel?
Well, it's considered residential. Now, there's commercial property and residential
So we're
property.
only talking about
So we're only
commercial.
talking about, yeah. In most cases, in the centralized city, it's urbanized, so you don't have that condition. But there are a few sites where you might have a house and maybe a gravel road that accesses that might be a little bit more than that. But the way it was set up is that one residence is one ERU, and that's the way it was. That was the way it's adopted, or it will be adopted. Sure.
Thank you.
Doug Burtwell, 34608 Northwest 11th Avenue. I guess I don't know much about stormwater, but I figure that everything's got to ultimately go into the creeks and the rivers. That would be my guess. And is the current infrastructure, all the pipes and sewers, adequate for the current development that exists in the city? Or do we need to add more now to just accommodate what we've got? That would be my question.
Let Tony feel that one, too.
Well, to answer your question, the way our ordinance is written is all development is required to manage their stormwater, quantity and quality. So they're required to have a stormwater report and analyze the site for the impacts to the storm system, which requires that they have some kind of system in place that detains the water to the pre-developed condition. So the answer to the question is that all development is required to detain stormwater to prevent the storm system from being inundated and try to prevent that problem. I can't say that that there isn't a problem in certain areas. There is a problem in certain areas, but in general, they're required to manage their stormwater, detain the stormwater so it doesn't overtax the storm system.
So they need to mitigate their
They
impact.
need to mitigate their own impacts,
And
yes.
whether it's residential development, I know the school is going through an extensive
They have
process
to
right
do
now
the
to
same
address
thing.
that. Yeah,
They have
so-
stormwater quality and quantity, ponds and treatment systems that's going to treat the water too.
Right. Okay. Good. Does that answer your question?
The current build-out is, that we've got existing, is the system adequate, or does it need to be upgraded to just accommodate what we've got now?
Yeah, okay, no, good question.
I can speak to that. So the current system is adequate. but there are deficiencies in it that need corrected. Those are listed on our capital improvement plan as well. Relocation of certain catch basins, identifying places where the water drainage isn't flowing correctly, things like that. So there are small deficiencies in the system that are identified in our study that we will address. But by and large, as a system, is what Tony Cooper was speaking to, is the system is currently adequate as a whole. And as we grow with development, they're going to have to mitigate their impact to make sure that stays the case.
Hi, Devin Ross for Department of Ecology. I just wanted to mention, I heard grants mentioned. So we are able, through our Stormwater Financial Assistance Program, to grant up to $5 million annually, and we ask for a 25% match requirement. So I see this utility as a great opportunity to come up with some of those match dollars at the local level that will then lead to more money for future investment down the road. And I've seen a short list of capital improvement projects, and it looks like most of them are eligible for funding, so I'm just really glad to hear that there could be a local source that will leverage more state funding. And we're having a grant development workshop on May 15th, so next week, to start talking about grant application development. And those grants will be, the applications will be due in October. Funding decisions will be made in July 2020, and usually work can start in January 2021.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
Do we need to have a stormwater utility in order to access those grants at that same level?
What you need is 25% match for the $5 million to up to $5 million. So whatever funding amount that you request, you need to come up with 25% of it at the local level. So I believe at $5 million, that's about $1.1 million at the local level that we'd ask for match. So you don't need a stormwater utility, but however, it is a great way to get to having that money on hand to match our grants.
So, any other public comment? So with that, at 7:20, I'll close the public comment period and turn it back over to the council for any other discussion, or if you have any questions for staff.
I think it's a good idea to separate capital from expense. We can have a historical view of what we've been spending, which I don't believe we have now, because they're just kind of lumped in with every other type of project and paid for out of the general fund. I'd like to see those separated out so we can see what we're spending and evaluate what we need to have on hand. And it sounds like granting would be easier, although maybe not from the Department of Ecology, but whatever research you did seems to support that. So I think it sounds like a good idea.
I echo John and Liz's sentiment on that. Also, it makes it easier to get that money and help us out a little bit more. I think it's a wise move for the city. And you all know how I am about new taxes, so our utility fees and such. I'm got to correct myself. Sorry, guys. But you know, with the infrastructure in place, it does take a lot of money to keep or do the upkeep, and we keep taking it out of the general fund. This is a way that we can kind of unmix the two and subsidize that, and not have to worry about that aging and being broken and repaired and coming out of the general fund. So I would agree that it's good for the city.
Good.
I would agree. I think it's important that we accrue for future maintenance, and the stormwater utility will also reduce the drain on the general fund. I think that's very critical that we protect our general fund as we go into the future also.
And as was brought out in the staff report, I mean, La Center right now is the only city in Clark County that does not have a stormwater utility, so it's pretty much predominant across the board with all the communities. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2019-12 and resolution 19.
Well, we don't want to, we're just approving the ordinance. That will be a separate resolution. Yeah.
Oh, they bring that together. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance 2019-12 can I trust the rest of this? Establishing a stormwater utility fee for the city of La Center, which will take effect 30 days after passage.
Second.
Let's see, Dan, that's really not, the resolution is to establish the fees, right?
Right, it'll come down.
So can you scroll up to the resolution, the way it's posted on the,
I've got questions on the resolution.
and let's just correct that, I think.
We'll take it up next after the ordinance, unless there's something intertwined.
So it's okay the way it was, the motion was made?
Just the ordinance.
Just the ordinance?
Plus it's a roll call.
Okay. All right. With that, I have a motion to...
Can we put the ordinance up on the screen?
Yeah, if you could scroll back up to the ordinance, please. There you go.
And can we scroll down, please, to section 3? There's a reference to section 3. 3. And if you continue to scroll down, you find that the proposed code appears. So I have a question for Mr. Cairns, just for my understanding. When we passed the ordinance for the temporary housing, the proposed code was on the very last pages of the document, as opposed to being embedded.
There's a formatting mess up on this. There should be a signature line after the approve. And so, and the new code language should be an exhibit attached to the ordinance.
Thank you.
So,
Okay. That's questioning what I saw up there.
right.
And, yeah, because as it has edited up here, it appears between sections 3 and 5, which didn't seem right.
Right.
And there is no section 4, by the way.
Right, so I think there should be a signature line right after this, then the exhibit, and there's this extra stuff at the end of the code language. Scrap that.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. So it's been moved and seconded to adopt ordinance 2019-12, an ordinance of the City of La Center, Washington, amending Title III of the La Center Municipal Code by adding a new chapter, 3.36, Stormwater Utility, thereto creating a stormwater utility and regulations pertaining thereto, establishing effective date and providing for publication. This is an ordinance, so if I could get a roll call. Vote.
Councilmember Boff?
Yes.
Councilmember Stimmel?
Yes.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
Councilmember Strobehn?
Yes.
Councilmember Cerveny.
Oh, I had you as Mayor Pro Tem Cerveny. Councilmember Cerveny?
Not this week.
The ordinance passes unanimously. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff, for all your hard work and getting this accomplished. It's been quite a process, and I'm glad we brought it in. Thank you. So next on the agenda, we have Resolution 19-445, Stormwater Utility Administrative Fees and Charges. So that will be presented by Dustin, or are we just going to carry forward with the resolution? Okay. So now would be time to make a motion for the resolution. Could you scroll down to the resolution while you got the resolution? They're good. If I get a motion and a second to approve the resolution.
Can you fix that typo in resolution?
A couple things to point out. Notice that the way this works is the ordinance authorizes the setting of fees, so that's why the ordinance comes first. Now the resolution implements that, but you notice the effective date of this isn't until the ordinance takes effect 30 days hence. That's kind of, there are a couple last minute changes on both of these documents to get the horse back in front of the cart on this thing.
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 19-445, a resolution of the City of La Center, Clark County, Washington, relating to the administrative fees and charges of the La Center Municipal Code.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution number 19-445. Yeah, we'll correct that one, yes. So it's a resolution, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. So next on the agenda, we have two annexations this evening. And Mr. Eisman was here this evening to present. Good evening, Mr. Eisman.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council, and citizens and guests here in the center. This is one of the more pleasurable moments of what I do, because the annexation of land into the city implements your comprehensive plan, which means that the plan that you put together for the growth of your community is actually coming to fruition. So it's a good step from my perspective. Laura, if you could bring up the Connor annexation and go to about page 11. So while that's going on, annexation is a multi-step process. It's governed by the city code and it's governed by state statute. We are in the petition process for annexation. The steps are the applicant who has land inside the growth boundary comes to the city council with what's called a 10% notice of intent to annex. In a public meeting, not a hearing, the city council is given an opportunity to consider whether it wants the applicant to come forward with what's called the 60% petition to annex. If you decide tonight that you want to come forward, you'd like those property owners to come forward to the 60%, you're effectively setting the boundary of the annexation area. Once that 60% petition is submitted, we're going to send out CPUT for the rezone of the property. We're going to communicate with Clark County to get a certificate of sufficiency, and we'll come back to you for a public hearing at a date yet to be determined for the actual annexation ordinance with the city attorney will prepare. So that's the process that we're in right now. Multi-step process. This is the first step, the 10% notice. You decide whether you want this to go forward, and then the applicant will come back with a petition. Given the fact that the applicants in this case in both of the annexations own 100% of the properties that they want to annex, getting 60% of the valuation is not going to be difficult at all. So in the first case, this is the annexation for what is known as, I call the Connor and Harrison. Mr. and Mrs. Connor own the larger parcel, and Mr. Harrison owns the two smaller parcels. This is an area up above Southview Heights. To the east, off of North Fork, is what is known as Link Wolverton's property, which has been annexed into the city. No development is occurring there. To the south and to the west, just below this area that's outlined in the polygons, is the Stevens Farm Development Project. So this area is developing out right now, and it happens to, if this annexation goes forward, you will have annexed all of the land to that portion of your urban growth boundary. All right? That's the extent of it until you expand or change the urban growth boundary. The property owner and the representative are here tonight. I'm sure they would like to introduce you to what their plans are right now. If you decide to bring this forward for annexation, because it is under county zoning in your urban growth boundary, it will come in as low-density residential. However, or in addition to that, your comprehensive plan says that this area here has what's called a mixed-use overlay on top of it. So the base zone is residential, which is how it will be zoned when it comes in, and then it'll have a mixed-use overlay, which allows, which the City Council and the Planning Commission worked on a couple of years ago, to allow low-density residential to have some other kinds of uses, some other kinds of opportunities, like weddings and events and those kinds of things before the property fully develops out. So that's the Connor annexation piece right there. If you could go then, Laura, to page 9 on the Schlentz property. Any questions before she does? Any questions about this property? No? Very good. Thank you, Laura. So this property, the next one, the Connor property I'd say page 9. Thank you. The Connor property represents about 38 acres. The other parcel, this is the Schlentz property. It's roughly 5 acres. You can see it is south of the Holly Park area, near the school. Immediately to the east of it is what's called the Minahan annexation. It's now a development proposal that's coming forward, 39 single-family low-density units immediately and adjacent to the east of that white box. That's right there. This property is at the southern end of Ivy Avenue. It is at the very bottom of your urban growth boundary. There's one little wrinkle with this problem, and that is the way that the property lines are set up. 97% of this property is in your urban growth boundary, and a couple of percent is just outside of your urban growth boundary. So what the county will do when if this comes forward for annexation, you will be allowed to annex only the land that's actually inside your growth boundary. And like the Randy Good annexation several years back, there'll be a little sliver that's left out right at the very lower right-hand corner. That's the mystery of property. So that's how that works. The Holly Park project is developing, or will develop soon. They're coming for a public hearing later this next month. And if they start development in the summer, sewer, water will be accessible to the Schlentz property. For the Connor property, sewer and water is available to outside on North Fork, where the Stevens site is developing right now. I thought Mr. Schlentz was going to be here tonight, but I don't see him. Oh, he is.
I'm Chris Avery, Commissioner's leader.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Chris. So he'll be able to answer questions about what's proposed there. That's the introduction to the annexation request. Again, it's a multi-step process. If you decide to go forward, you're setting the boundaries for the annexations. Anything to add to that, Dan? Thank you.
Real quick, Eric.
Yes, sir.
On that last one there, underneath the authorization for notice of intent to annex, it's got his name, signature, and such, and then underneath that it says for Breezy Creek Trails. Can you explain why that's under the signatures?
No.
Okay.
I would if I could.
I have a question for Tony that might be related. Don't we have plans to put a walking path through there? Or really close to there?
I can address that.
On that one right there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, they're,
I can do it. Tony.
go ahead.
Sure. If I may, well, I was just mentioning the Holly project immediately to the east. If that goes forward, they will dedicate land on the northern end of that barren field that's right there that will connect a trail from Holly Park across their property. It would then, Mr. Schlentz has already indicated for several years that he was very willing. You can see where the tree line is that cuts across the northern corner of his property. He would be willing to dedicate a trail across his property. So that's the reference to the Breezy Creek Trail, but I don't know that there's a legal entity for that. And then that would allow the trail to come from Holly Park down into the Stormwater Park area. So that is part of the city's capital facilities plan that you're referring to. So it's a long-term plan that, again, happy it's being implemented.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Eisner?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Would the property owners like to address the council? Do you have anything you want to share with us, or?
I can explain real quick. The reason being why you've got that little sliver down there. See that house to the west? The property line went right through the north part of the house there. So about 2 years ago, we did a boundary line adjustment, and we had to balance area because it's that parcel to the south was at 10 acres, or no, excuse me, it was this one. But we couldn't do a BLA and only take area, so we had to balance it out. So I moved the property line up to meet the minimum setback to the house, and then I moved it down so where we balanced square footage. So that's why that little sliver is left over right there. So that's how that happened.
Good. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mayor, City Council members, my name's Matt Connor, 35212 Northeast North Fork. I own the 30-acre parcel. And we moved to the area about 5 years ago and had a chance to annex then, and we decided just to wait. And see how things went. So at this point, we're interested in annexing the city. First of all, for the city services, we really like the city, and we like to have police respond to our house if need be, instead of sheriff. And we have no plans at this time to develop, but we do like to do some events on our property, and we like that ability within the city of La Center.
Very good.
So I'm available for any questions if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Connor? Okay, well, thank you for that, yeah. Appreciate it.
So there are two separate notices of intent to annex, so there are two separate motions
Yeah,
that
so,
I've prepared.
so we can do them back to back, but one at a time. If I could get a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move the council accept the Connor and Harrison notice of intent to annex and invite the property owner to submit a petition to annex consistent with the city procedures for annexation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the Connor and Harrison notice of intent to annex and invite the property owner to submit a petition to annex consistent with city procedures for annexation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. If I could get a motion for the Schlitz property,
Yes,
please.
Mr. Mayor, I move the council to accept the Peter Schlentz notice of intent to annex and invite the property owner to submit a petition to annex consistent with city procedures for annexation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. The council accept Peter Schlitz notice of intent to annex and invite the property owner to submit a petition to annex consistent with city procedures for annexations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, council. Thank you to the property owners, and appreciate all the staff's hard work. Right? I know this is one of your more pleasurable things to deal with, although there's a few things that you do that aren't so pleasurable. I understand that. I appreciate all your hard work and efforts. So that concludes our agenda for this evening. If I could get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. Thank you for attending this evening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great evening.